and welcome to another edition of History After Hours. This is Season 3, Episode 6. My name is Kevin Pumphrey, and with me is...
Ron Franklin.
And we might be joined later by Mr. Keith Todd. We're not sure. He's in a meeting right now. He might roll in. But if you would like to find us on Twitter, you can find us at History Hours PC. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube. So I always forget to mention that, but I thought I'd open up with that. But today we are going to roll through some of the things that have occurred. I think we probably should start with the tragedy that happened, I guess it was Sunday night. I guess we woke up Monday, and at that point the Las Vegas shooting had occurred, where at this point there are 58 confirmed.
58 or 59.
58
right.
or 59, and what, 500?
Yeah, a little over, yeah.
Something wounded. So this, of course, is going to bring up a lot of politics and a lot of situations, but it's such a tragedy when you think about the families, the children waking up without parents, and it's just a horrible situation when something like this happens.
How did you find out about it?
I wake up at 5 a.m., I turn on the news, and I saw it, and I was like, wow. I didn't really know what it was. It takes a second to process something like that, especially when you just wake up.
Right.
But I couldn't believe it. And because I was getting ready to work out, and I was just like, I can't, that's, it's not something you ever just think you're going to wake up and see. Because I remember the Orlando shooting, I guess there was 29, 30 people that was killed in that
Oh, you're talking about
event, the nightclub.
Nightclub. There were 48 or so, I think.
Oh, that were killed?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it was that high. Wow. But, I mean, you just don't, you just wake up on a normal Monday morning, and it's such a tragedy, and it's hard to you don't know how to react. Of course, you have grief and sadness. But, of course, being a history teacher like you, my immediate thought was, okay, what was the motivation? Mm-hmm. Is this political? Is this religious? What side are they on? Is it left? Is it right? What was your initial thoughts when you heard about it?
Well, I'm kind of like you. I saw it first thing that morning, so it was early. It's around 6-ish, I guess, by the time I saw it. And you flip on the TV just to kind of get a start for the day. And it took me a second to kind of register, like, what has happened? And then to realize it had happened the night before, and they're still processing the scene. But the first thing that I saw was a clip. They were actually in the middle of explaining to it, and they were showing cell phone video,
right?
And you could hear in the background over the commentator just that dot, 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 dot. You could, I mean, you and I'm like, good God, that's an automatic weapon,
right.
And so they're showing the angle from the hotel and everything, and talking about how the guy had smashed out the windows and was just basically just a shooting gallery for folks. So yeah, I mean, so while I'm busy just sort of being horrified at what I was seeing and hearing, then I start to slowly try to analyze that and then process it. Who's this guy? They said he was already dead, so I knew that by that point. But yeah, first thing I do is go to motivation. What is he associated with? Something you automatically go, is it ISIS?
Right.
And then I think the commentators at that time were talking about that there had been that ISIS had said taken credit for it, but that was turned out to be false because the guy's family said that he had never had any kind of association. Then you're like, okay, did he snap? Did he have some sort of mental condition that led him to some sort of delusion? Is he just some evil bastard? Like, what's going on? Is he left wing, right wing? Because and part of, I think once we got to school, you and I talked about this a little bit. If he's on one side of that spectrum or the other, that sort of adds fuel to the fire that we already have about the divisiveness in our country over, everybody sort of pointing fingers at who's the more violent. Is it the right wing, sort of hardline nationalist groups over here, or in the white supremacists and everything, or is it the Antifa boys on the other side? And this guy doesn't seem to, from what they've said so far, doesn't seem to be affiliated with anything or anybody. I don't know. But then we find out that he's got this massive stash of weapons in the hotel room, a cache at home, bomb making material apparently, and he's got two different. But this was well thought out. So when I think about the mental problems, perhaps, like maybe this guy is just one of those anarchists who decides, I've done everything I can do, but now I want to do this. Why target those people? He had thought about this ahead of time. Pick up that hotel room and to know that the concert was going to go on across the street and to know exactly what he was going to do.
Did they know how he got all those rifles up there?
A couple of bags at a time. He just towed them up the elevator.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. When I saw it at first, and then I found out it was Jason Aldean, a country music concert, I immediately, my first thought was ISIS, like you, because you're worried it's a terrorist attack. My second thought was a social justice warrior, maybe, or somebody, a left winger that has finally had enough and decided to kill as many country folks as possible. But then that didn't, and I was worried about that because you never know. I mean, we definitely overreact as a country to some things. And what I mean by that is not by grief or support or money or things like that, but we sometimes, power-wise, authority-wise, I mean, after 9/11, if you had written an article basically saying we shouldn't go into Afghanistan, we shouldn't try to track down the people that did this, it's only going to make matters worse, they would have been ridiculed to no degree because our whole country was unified in revenge. Mm-hmm. So you just wonder if something like this happens, how is it going to affect, especially I was worried about President Trump, how would he be able to consolidate more power? Is he going to declare a national emergency and start ripping rights away and
right.
all sorts of habeas corpus, all that stuff? So I was worried, and fortunately, if there's any kind of fortunate thing, I don't know that there could be for something like this, but fortunately it doesn't seem like there's any political or religious motivation.
Well, what's interesting kind of after the fact is that another thought that I had was there's immediately going to be someone who goes, well, we should have a discussion about guns, and the other side is going to say, well, now's not the time.
Now's not the time.
And then they're going to argue about that when we should be in the middle of dealing with this situation and helping to mitigate the suffering and try to figure out the whole details behind that, and then have a constructive conversation about things like semi-automatic weapons, the conversion of semi-automatic weapons to fully automatic weapons, what's necessary. For people to suggest that we don't have a glorification of guns in this country, we've got this obsession with firearms, and I'm a Second Amendment rights person. I own firearms. I have a concealed carry permit, but at the same time, I can't wrap my head around the idea that anybody honestly needs, multi-round clips and weaponry of that caliber or capacity, like a paramilitary group. I don't know why do we still think that that's necessary? And I know a lot of people who actually do think that that's necessary. Mm-hmm. Like, why is that? I don't quite understand.
Well, it has to do with their right to own. Now listen, I teach American history, so I talk a lot about why we love guns, how we needed guns. I mean, the Colt 45 tamed the West. We've used guns in this country probably more vigorously than any other country because as we were pushing west as a nation, we were out in the open. We were seeing danger constantly. We did have to hunt to survive in the Great Plains and whatnot. So there is a glorification of guns.
How do we associate that sort of mentality with sort of suburbia, where people go, well, I have to? Is it because they're afraid of not being able to defend their homes? Is it?
Well, what you're going to hear is, I want to be able to defend myself. Okay, you don't need a automatic or semi-automatic weapon, I assume, to defend your home.
No.
I mean, now, of course, a lot of people will think the Second Amendment means that we have the right to have these guns in case the government becomes oppressive. But look, there's not enough guns that we're going to be able to attack our government as they bomb us with drones. So the question is, where do you draw the line? I mean, obviously, most people support the right of gun ownership. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's the problem.
Right.
The problem is, where do you draw the line with gun ownership, and how many laws do we have? I mean, should we let everybody own their own nuclear weapon? Should everybody have a tank? Well, no. I mean, there are limits, obviously. No, not everybody can use napalm.
I heard somebody suggest that maybe instead of worrying about handguns, rifles, this and that maybe it's about how many of those weapons you actually have. Like, how many do you need? Okay, so let's say you can make a strong argument for some sort of semi-automatic weapon. All right, fine. I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm hunting with that, but let's say I've got one,
right,
or two. How many of those is too many for society itself to not be endangered by some sort of stupid action on my part? Let's say that I do go weird, and I have this moment like this guy did. He had. Did you see a number? I want to say he had
10.
I think he had 10 or so with him, and then he had another 15 or so at home, and so he's got like upwards of 30
one
weapons.
person? Yeah.
I don't know that that's a problem. I know people that are gun collectors, so fine. But is it, well, let me take the other stance. Is it problematic to own guns just because this one guy did something stupid with his big cache of guns? So I don't know that that becomes everybody's problem, because there are responsible gun owners who do own lots of weapons. So again, I'm trying to figure this out. I go back and forth on the spectrum on this, because like I said, I do own guns, and we do come from a hunting tradition in my family, and the idea that we should and will protect our home and family. But at the same time, I still wonder, is there some responsible way for us to, as a society, deal with the ongoing calamity, which is gun violence in this country?
Right, and we're talking specifically not about murders necessarily. We're talking about mass shootings.
Right.
This is the problem that we need to solve, apparently, because more people are killed by hands and feet than guns. More people are killed by automobile accidents. I've seen a statistic where more people are killed by hammers and knives or something like that than rifles or whatever.
Yeah, I need to check on that.
So I mean, okay, well, we'll share just a moment. You had shared with me a pretty decent set of charts that talked about, I guess, violence or gun violence, murders.
Yeah, so, and I'll have to go back and double check. Maybe we can post this on there, what the actual association is. But there's a nonprofit organization whose job it is to track gun violence, specifically gun violence in this country. And they do it on a daily basis, and they do it city by city, and they do it day by day. And it's nonpartisan. It's not trying to say that we needed to get rid of guns or anything like that. They're just saying, here, this is information that you need to, pardon the pun, but arm yourself with, so that you can make informed decisions about what happens in this country. And so there's been over 15, I may be exaggerating this a tad, 15,000 incidents this year concerning gun accidents and injuries and death. There have been over 11,000 deaths. Some of those are based on murder. Some of those are based on crossfire. Some of those are based on police being killed. Some of those are based on police killing other people. Some of that is people defending their homes. Some of that is accidents where people accidentally shoot each other, children shooting each other in the home. So they got all these statistics broken down. And you look at that, again, you look at it year by year and day by day even, like it starts to really show a pattern that we're losing a lot of our citizens that we're supposed to be protecting. Supposedly, this is making our society safer. So, does it? Are we safer because of all these guns, or is it actually adding to the problem? I'm really I'm sort of stuck in the middle on how I feel about that, because I don't want to see gun ownership eroded, but I think that there must be some sort of logical way to tone down the actual violence because of it. Like, we don't seem safer because of it.
Right, and see, that's the thing. Like, when we talk about mass shootings, you want to stop violent behavior. You don't want to stop people from owning guns, but there is a middle ground somewhere. And just like I think probably most things, the answer lies somewhere in the middle, where probably more stringent gun laws, probably limiting access as much as we can to semi-automatic and automatic weapons.
Are you for background checks or no?
Yes.
In all cases, because I'm talking about background checks don't have to occur between individuals, and they don't have to occur at gun shows. So would you, do you guys have?
I mean, I've shot guns. I have a gun. I'm not a gun person, though. I didn't grow up hunting, like a lot of people around here.
But would you have a problem going through a background check is what I'm asking?
Well, I wouldn't, and I would want, I would feel better if everyone had to have a background check. Now, I don't know the legality and the red tape that's involved from one person selling a gun to somebody else and the gun shows. I don't know what it would do or cost, but at the end of the day, if
the logistics behind that just seem overwhelming, maybe.
Right, maybe that's it. But my thing is, like, right wing or left wing or whatever. If you could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that limiting these types of weapons or making more stringent gun laws, background checks, whatever, if it could reduce or maybe help to limit these shootings, like instead of this many people dying because he had 10 rifles up there, if he only could have 3 or 2, or if he didn't have a semi-automatic or automatic, if you could take the number down from 59 killed to 8, wouldn't that be worth it?
Well, I wonder though. I've thought about what other countries have done. Like I think about Japan, who have some of the most. They don't have anti-gun laws, but it takes so much time and effort and red tape and bureaucratic sort of BS to to actually get the license to own a gun, that people just don't do it because it's not worth it. I mean, months and months and months and months worth of trying to go in here and talking to these people and filling these forms out, and they bog down that, you know what, never mind. Or I look at Australia, who went through and basically did a gun roundup and said, you're not going to have these anymore.
Right, and they haven't had a
after
mass shootings. Right.
Or I look at Canada and I see that they have a gun culture because they do hunt, but at the same time, you're not allowed to own handguns, and they have very few homicides based on that. But I wonder if those approaches would even fly here. I don't think that they would, number one. And if you did try something like that, I don't know. I wonder if, because of what you said, sort of the frontier sort of attitude and things that we've done, if that's just that kind of stand your ground violent behavior isn't part of who we are anyway. Not that I'm trying to excuse that, but I wonder if it's just, even if we passed more restrictive gun laws, I don't know that actually curbs the violence overall. I just don't know that happens.
Well, violent people are violent people, and they're going to do violent things. If you can take the weapons, the high-powered weapons, away from them where they are limited in that. Now, people will say, well, only the criminals will have the guns then. But if you look at other countries where this has worked, where they have limited or, and I'm not saying I don't want people to have their guns taken away. I know when Obama was president, I kept seeing memes all the time. Obama's coming for your guns.
Yeah. Well, I saw that.
He never did.
Somebody said that about Hillary the other day, and I don't know what her response was, but they were like, well, it wasn't a meme. It was actually something posted online. Hillary's coming for your guns. I think I saw that on Fox News, as a matter of fact. And there was this massive outcry, obviously. I just don't think that.
I mean, I don't have the answers, but I am definitely for logic and reason. And if you can take our culture, our society, our bias out of it, and you could prove that limiting or taking away some of these weapons would reduce the overall murders in I don't think you can reduce maybe the number of mass shootings. Although I think we've had shootings every day this year. I think I heard that. We've had
more shootings than there are days in the year so far.
Right.
I think that's right.
So I don't know that you reduce that number, but if you can reduce the overall carnage, maybe it's worth it at that point. I'm also against this whole it's not time to talk about it. Because if people aren't emotionally involved to talk about it, well, we're going to wait a month and then we're going to really get serious with gun control. No, we're going to forget about it and move on like we did after the last shooting. My thing is maybe, yes, you should pay some sort of homage or let the FBI do their research first. So when you have the facts, then you can make better decisions. But I don't think we need to just wait for waiting. Once we have enough information to start talking logically about gun control, this is the time to. That's why we're talking about it on this podcast.
Right.
We wouldn't be talking about it right now had this not happened.
Yeah, that's what I want. Some logical discourse on what can we do, because there is obviously an issue with gun violence in this country. What can we do? What is a solution that fits best for all people, gun owners and people who have no interest in owning guns? Like, can there be a happy medium in that, or is it, again, are we just going to continue to sort of exist in this in certain areas in the country, it's like a Wild West sort of shootout at times.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, would you want all those 30,000 or however many people, all them to be packing with a gun as well? Would that have helped the situation if they start turning around and started firing at the building?
I don't see how.
Well, I mean, that's what that's what a lot of people have said. Well, if everybody had a gun, then, and maybe that would have avoided the whole situation. But
that guy's perched up on the 32nd floor of a hotel shooting down. There's no way that you're going to get him from down there. It's just not going to happen.
Seems like that would cause more.
I also think part of our maybe a solution, or at least something that we could use to try to temper some of the violence, would be not curb gun ownership, but insist on gun training. Here's how you properly use a firearm. And then maybe that cuts down, if nothing else, maybe that just cuts down on the accidents.
Yeah. I agree with that, and on that same line of thinking, when we talk about the NFL and the kneeling as far as opposed to police violence, speaking of training, I am not a police officer. I've never had to go through the training, and I'm sure some of them are very well trained and ready for this. What I don't know is how many people that go through it and make it through police training and then are policemen, how many of them are psychologically prepared to do that job day after day after day. Right. Because I don't know, I mean, I think that's where some resources and funding need to go. because I can't imagine every time you pull over a car for speeding, you don't know if it's about to turn into a life or death struggle.
Right.
And being on edge like that, I mean, I think there's a very small percentage of people that can handle that well and make quick, good decisions. Now, I know they're trained, and so I'm not bad-mouthing any police officers out there at all, but I would like to see more research done in that area as far as psychological training for officers to make better decisions or to be.
It's got to be hard.
I can't imagine.
gotta
I'm
be
not.
hard.
I couldn't do it. I mean, I'm not cut out that way.
It's also got to be difficult to go from the absolute monotony of police work in some cases where you just sort of are waiting for something to happen and day after day maybe nothing does and you get a call for this or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're in the middle of a life and death situation.
Yeah.
Split second, you can go from one extreme to the other. That's got to take a toll on how you process the world, and if that happens over and over again, that would be a form of sort of PTSD, in my opinion, because you don't know. You would sort of train yourself to be on edge all the time because you don't know what's about to happen, and you have to be prepared just in case. Maybe continued training and continued counseling.
Yeah, I don't know what it takes. Like I say, I'm talking. I wish we had a former police officer in here or somebody that can.
If somebody has a family, if you're listening and you have thoughts on this and you want to post something on Twitter for us to be able to think about, or you want to try to contact us, like that would be awesome, and we'd love to be able to put that in.
Yeah, post your opinions on Facebook or Twitter or wherever, and you can go back to the first of this podcast and figure where that's at. But
I wish we could do this live and get like phone calls in and all that kind of stuff.
We might have to change the format where we have a little red phone. You guys are a bunch of idiots. You don't know what you're talking. Well, that's probably true. Yeah. No, I couldn't do it, and I can't imagine. I mean, I don't live my life minute by minute thinking this could turn into a life and death struggle.
Yeah, right.
I mean, how many times in my entire life have I ever thought I could die? I can't even hardly think of any. But police officers have to at least think that way just about every day. Right. That is a whole different mindset. Now, once again, do police officers make mistakes? Are there bad cops? Of course, just like in any profession. I mean, we're teachers. There's bad teachers. Everybody's had a bad teacher that didn't care about them and didn't try.
Everybody, even if you're a good teacher, you've had a bad day.
Right.
Or it didn't go like you planned.
And once again, that's another thing is you got this whole human emotion thing you got to take care of.
Like when we mess up, we can sort of revamp again tomorrow. When cops mess up, like people could die unnecessarily. That's a
burden.
Huge burden. Yeah. So I mean, hats off to anybody who's in law enforcement who's trying to do the right thing. But it's got to be tough. And so yeah, they need our support as much as we need theirs. But
there's a reason this gun control, gun violence, limiting guns is a complicated issue. It's because it's complicated. You want people to have as much right as you can give them, but at the same time, I remember Obama made a speech about seatbelts and driver's license. Basically, a car can be a deadly weapon. So we have people take licenses, or license exams and written exams and driver's exams, and then we have seatbelt laws and traffic laws and all that, and we do all that, and of course that's limiting people, but we do that in order to try to protect as many people as possible. And some people who can't, if you can't get a license, then you can't drive, or you're not supposed to. He kind of viewed that same, pragmatic approach to guns, but
I'm not sure that we're pragmatic on this issue, though.
I don't know. Yeah, correct.
As a nation, I mean.
And if you can change a semi-automatic weapon to an automatic weapon,
it's not hard to do.
Then you kind of have to go down that road. Is what guns should people have? Why? What's the motivation? I mean, so I don't know. We're not going to solve this in this podcast, obviously. Yeah. And me and you both are moderates in a lot of issues.
Well, we want to talk about because it's definitely the big thing happening in the country right now. And it's going to continue to be a debate, and probably not going to get solved anytime soon.
Are we the worst at mass shootings in our current day and age overall? Now we're such a large country too. You got to take that into account. But
I mean, do we have the most?
The most
of all the industrialized countries?
Yes.
I don't know. I'd have to check on that. Maybe we can look at the statistics. It looks like we would probably be up there because I think we have the most liberal gun laws, and that seems like a weird thing to say considering our political spectrum and how folks say, well, liberals want to take your guns. No, we have lax gun laws, honestly. They're very liberal, which means that you have a lot of freedom to own guns, personal liberties to own firearms in pretty much any way, shape, or form that you want. So, I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
That question was posted by a student of ours, Blake Wooldridge, who wanted to know about the Vegas shooting, and obviously that's on everybody's mind as we go through this. Well, we spent most of the podcast now talking about that. We will end with another student question.
All right.
Kaylee Booth wrote in, and this is if you're a student listening to this, I'm sure you could probably relate. She asked, how do y'all feel about early graduation? And then another question she has is why students have to take history almost every year, even if they want to major in something in college that has nothing to do with history. So both of those are very valid questions.
Mm-hmm.
I've had students to graduate early. I've had students graduate in 11th grade. They've got their credits in and they're able to graduate. Do you have any opinions on graduation, early graduation? Good thing, bad thing?
If people can do it and they've gone through the process, they've got all their credits in place, then fine. I think about when we were students and how back in high school we had work release. Even I know some schools do that.
Yeah.
We don't here. But I knew students who needed to work to help support their family, and they would come to school half the day, and they would go off and work the other half the day, and they got sort of an out for that. They still had their credits; everything was done up. But I think that if a student is mature enough to have gone through the program, done well, and proved themselves, and can sort of, I think maybe ACT testing, since that's sort of college preparedness, if that's something that's in their future, maybe that has to factor in there as well. I think if you've proven yourself, then we probably need to let you get on about your business.
Yeah, I mean, I had a student in 11th grade. His grandfather owned a ranch. He was ate up with it. You knew from the time he was in 5th grade, he was going to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
And I mean, a real live cowboy. And he would come into class late some days because he had just got back from taking a load of cattle to Texas. And now this is a kid that's 16 years
The
old.
Chisholm Trail.
And he would park Barrett Hall, if he's listening, from Bismarck, Arkansas, and he would park his huge double wide truck and trailer out in student parking, and it took up like 12, and so he had to go move it and all this. But I mean, that kid needed to just go, and he didn't care. Now he eventually graduated and left. So there's kids like that know.
Yeah.
My problem is two things. Number one, the social aspect of having. I loved my senior year. I loved playing sports. I mean, I think it was great. I could have won another senior year. And also, research shows as well that sometimes when kids have a gap year after graduation, that helps them stay in college. A lot of kids, they need
The
time to
maturity
figure
level.
out. Yeah, you don't want a kid to leave high school. I don't want to say protection of high school, but that's kind of what it is in a way. The protection of high school. They graduate, they get out there as a 16, 17-year-old, whatever, and then they're not ready. And then they go to school for 3 weeks and drop out, or they get into a job they hate, but now they have some financial stuff, so they just have to stay at a job.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
they
If you've
hate.
got somebody who's obviously a more mature 17, 18-year-old than somebody else, and they've gone through the process, and they've taken upper level classes, and they've, what I'm saying, or whatever, or even if you've just been a solid student, regardless of what level class you've taken, but you've, factor in that person's maturity and skill level, and is this the best thing for them at this point, and are they ready to move on? Then I think that if that's all the answers to those things are yes, and then you can make some sort of affirmation, send them on if they're ready. Let them go do what they need to do.
Okay, I'm going to give you a challenge now.
All right.
Now, this is going to be tough for you.
Okay.
I know how you are. In 3 sentences or less,
Uh-oh.
we're already in trouble. Explain to the best of your ability why history is important for students to take, even if it's not going to be part of their major.
All right.
Sense number
Social
one.
studies helps you become a better social member. Just those are the fewest words I can put in place.
Yeah.
If you studying history, you watch societies and how they function, or the dysfunctionality in some of these things, and once you see that and watch for patterns, and you understand why people feel the way they do and why societies function the way they do, then you're actually a better member of the society in which you belong, because now you understand your rights, you understand your placement, you understand other people's, you have a situation, you have empathy, and you're going to deal with whether you are actually actively involved in politics or in law or law enforcement or military stuff. You are impacted by those things, and it's good for you to have an understanding on the processes that are happening around you so that you can function as a citizen. Everybody needs it.
Right.
I think that regardless of what your major is going to be or what your impact is going to be, later in life, you have to understand how the world around you works.
Wow, how did you shorten that to 3 sentences? That's great.
mastery.
I know. I agree. We obviously find history important because we're history teachers. But I tell my kids, and here's the cliche answer. If you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I get it. Yes, if you hit the wall and break your hand one day and you don't learn your lesson from that and you do it 3 days later, you're a moron. You didn't learn your history. You should have learned your history, and that way you'd know that hitting a wall is a bad idea. My thing is the whole perception of life changes. When you have more of a global historical knowledge, it's kind of like the way I feel about traveling. If all you do is know your present, your life, where you live, that's like being in an entire library, but you're taking the same book out and reading it over and over again.
It's the same coloring book.
Right, yeah. But as you learn history and as you learn about the experiences of people from all walks of life, it broadens your perspective in such a way that it makes everything in your life more valuable. You can watch Family Guy and get all the jokes. South Park means more to you. Movies, you get all the hidden meanings. You understand the history. So it makes life even.
I don't think you can remove that from a student's life and have them perform at the level which they could if they had gone through social studies programs.
Right.
And not all of them are the same. I get that. Like not all history courses are created equal, and people don't get as much out of them. But just to say that for people to say, I hate history, well, really, that's you've learned that history can be boring because you've had bad classes apparently.
Right.
And even if you go through stellar classes, you may not still love it, but at the same time, you've been exposed to more information. You've been exposed to things that have happened in the past that you can think about. It causes you to think more deeply on an analytical level, and it sort of forces you out of the bubble in which you've existed for so long. And so I think that that's going to benefit anybody, even if you don't like history class. At least you've developed some social skills, and now you can function at a higher level as you go off out into the world and do your thing.
Yeah, my claim that I always say is when students say, "Oh, history's boring," well, I always say this to my class: how many of you like to work on cars? And I always get 2 or 3 hands up. They like to work on cars. I say, well, why do you like cars? I bet it's because you know a lot about cars. Or how many of you like to do makeup? And you'll have 3 or 4 girls usually, but whoever raised their hand. Why? You probably know about makeup and foundation and the brands and all that. How come you don't like history? It's probably because you don't know that much about it. This is why old people like history. Have you noticed that
they've been around long enough?
They've been around long enough to see a lot of it, and so they made connections that they didn't learn in a classroom. But what I find is when I talk to people who are 30 years old, 40 years old and above, they are into history. They really like. My dad obviously probably didn't like history at all as a kid or in college. He was a farmer. But now he loves watching old westerns. He loves reading about George Washington. He has history books that because a lot of people do develop a love for history later in life. And so our job is to try to instill that earlier and to produce. Our founding fathers knew we needed a good, educated citizenry to make this whole republic thing work. And part of that is learning your history, learning what is valuable and why. And so I just encourage students, if you think that history's boring or you don't like it, it's probably not history's fault. It's probably your fault.
I think that history also helps us eliminate prejudices, if I can speak. It helps us to understand the nuances of interactions between different groups of people. The more you know and the more you see and the more people you interact with, even if you've never met folks, but now you understand something about their culture perhaps, because the history is so many things. It's not just this, look up a date and regurgitate information and this happened at this time, and just like that's not history. That's just fact checking or whatever. But so when true history, you learn about the human condition, and you, being human, need to understand that.
Yeah, everybody has their own history, right? You need to learn about your own history as well. But what's funny is me and you, what we teach in our class is actually the most influential things to ever occur. I don't talk about my students' life because nobody else cares. But I do talk about those figures that come along that change the game. You know, I mean, and I know that there's some things we talk about that are a little bit more dry. But generally speaking, when you teach a world, a Euro, or a U.S. history course, you're actually talking about the most exciting things that's ever happened.
Yeah.
So it
Game
makes
changers, yeah.
it makes no sense for a student to say history's boring. It's that student hasn't found value in the stories yet. But hopefully, as they learn it, they will, and it will become. I mean, man, I love it.
You ever had that student that would say, "Well, history's boring," but then they would, "What do you like?" And I had a kid one time who's like, "Well, I really like baseball," and that kid could name off every stat from everything that ever happened to teams all the way back into the 20s. He knew this guy and that guy, and I'm like, "You're studying history. You just narrowed it
Right.
down." And he was like, "Well, okay."
Yeah.
I mean, so it took him a minute. He had to, think that through, but he realized that I was right, and that's what you can actually find a focal point inside history for a segment of a particular story, a group of people, a region, or and like you said, the dramatic things that happen through that. We're talking about people's lives, and that is infinitely fascinating to me.
That's very good. Yeah. Well, that's a great note to end on this podcast. Wait, was there something else we needed to do?
Was there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I guess that's it for this. It is, by the way, I always try to say the dates so in the future when we become rich and famous,
Here
they'll
it is.
know.
We missed Tom Petty. He's only been gone a couple of days.
Oh, wow. Way to bring it down. Tom Petty, yes. As many of you know, I'm in a band and we play several Tom Petty songs. So that was kind of a shock. Mm-hmm. I didn't, of course, I guess he had a heart attack.
Yeah,
Is
so
that
it's a cardiac arrest.
Cardiac arrest. So that's a big loss. And I think he's underrated.
Oh, I definitely think that. Yeah, no, it's not flashy sort of rock and roll. But it's just filled with hooks and line. Just from not you can listen to a Tom Petty song, not even listen to the words, and it sort of feels like you've heard it before that's a good way.
Yeah.
It reminds you of something about yourself. To me, it's like a Tom Petty song. Some of his best songs reminds me of being in a car with like the windows open or the top down and just driving and cruising like that kind of freedom.
And this is right up your alley, probably.
So that's what his music always kind of meant to me. It felt like that kind of freedom.
I never thought he was one of the greatest singers. But
vocally, he's limited,
but you listen to the music he's created. Yeah. It's grooving, so it's kind of bluesy in a way, but it also has that little rock edge, and they always had a decent hook and a melody.
Yeah, massive. Like I said, even he's not the best singer, but whatever he did worked well for whatever they were doing. I mean, he was the perfect guy for that sound. You know what I mean? And so he's a talent that's going to be missed.
Yeah, it's pretty close. I don't know when this will be put out, but probably next week. So look us up on Facebook and History Hours PC on Twitter and on YouTube. We are currently trying to get our SoundCloud things. But anyhow, we will catch you on the flip flop. Goodbye.